The Dark Prophecy. The planet of Torith was quiet, a world of ancient traditions, strange customs, and a dark history that only the oldest could remember. The people of Torith had lived for thousands of years, ruled by their alien gods, and governed by the prophecies that had guided their every decision. To them, these prophecies were sacred, written in the stars, and read by the wisest among them. No one dared question them. But for one man, Jarek, the prophecies meant his end. He had no idea what awaited him as he stood on the edge of the great arena, looking out over the sea of alien faces that filled the vast space. His heart beat loudly in his chest, and his hands were tied with strong chains. The air was thick with tension, and the eyes of every alien in the crowd were fixed on him. He could feel their stares like a weight pressing down on him. His mind raced, but all he could think of was one thing: escape. Jarek had been brought here under false pretenses. He had been told that he would fight in the great arena, a place of honor where warriors from different worlds came to test their strength. He had trained for months, honing his skills and preparing for the battles ahead. But this was something different. This was not a fight for glory. This was not a fight for honor. This was a fight for his life. The alien priests, garbed in their flowing robes, moved around him in a circle. Their chants echoed through the arena, ancient words that no one fully understood. The crowd fell silent, awaiting the moment when the high priest would declare the fate of the prisoner before them. Jarek's breath came fast as he stood there, waiting for the truth to come. He had heard the whispers before, the rumors that something terrible was going to happen. The prophecies had spoken of a human warrior, one who had come from a distant world, a warrior who would be sacrificed to the ancient god of their people. And Jarek was that warrior. He had not believed the stories at first. He had laughed them off as nothing more than myth. But now, as the high priest approached him, Jarek's heart sank. He had been marked. His life had already been decided for him. The high priest raised his arms, and the crowd became still, the tension in the air almost unbearable. Warrior Jarek of the Human Alliance, the priest's voice rang out, deep and commanding. You have come to us under the stars, and you have been chosen by the ancient prophecies. Your fate is sealed. Jarek's stomach twisted. His fate was sealed. He had hoped, prayed even, that it was all just a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the look in the priest's eyes told him that there was no escape. He was not here to fight for glory. He was here to die. A chill ran down his spine as the priest continued. The prophecy has spoken of a warrior who would come from another world, a warrior strong and brave. But the stars have also spoken of his sacrifice, for only through his death will our world be saved from the great darkness that threatens to consume us all. The crowd murmured in agreement. The prophecies were never questioned. They were sacred, the foundation of everything that held the alien society together. And in their eyes, Jarek was not a man, not a warrior. He was a tool to save them all. Jarek's mind raced. He had no family here, no friends. He was a stranger in a foreign world, far from Earth, far from home. His thoughts drifted back to his mission. He had come to Torith to bring peace, to form an alliance with the aliens for the good of his people. But now, instead of an alliance, he was being offered up as a sacrifice. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from anger. He wasn't a sacrificial lamb. He was a warrior, a soldier who had fought in countless battles. He had survived wars, witnessed the destruction of entire civilizations, and faced death more times than he could count. And yet now he was supposed to accept his death without a fight. A strange fire burned inside him. He had no intention of dying here, not like this. He would not let these alien creatures decide his fate. His eyes hardened as he stared at the high priest. He would find a way to escape. He had to. But as the high priest spoke, the words hit Jarek like a physical blow. Warrior Jarek, you will die to protect this world. Your blood will be the price for the salvation of us all. The priest raised his hands, signaling the start of the ritual. The crowd cheered, their voices rising in a wave of sound. But Jarek did not join them. He stood still, his mind sharp, calculating. He knew he had little time. The guards around him stepped forward, their weapons drawn. They moved with deadly precision, surrounding him. Jarek's heart pounded, but his mind remained calm. He had fought his way out of worse situations. This would not be different. As the guards reached for him, a voice in the back of his mind whispered the truth. He was not the one who would save them, but somehow he was going to find a way to change the course of his fate. The priest's chanting grew louder as the ceremony began, and Jarek knew he had only moments to act. His body tensed, ready for the fight he knew was coming. There was no going back now. The sacrifice ritual begins. The crowd's roar was deafening as Jarek was dragged toward the towering altar at the center of the great arena. The massive stone structure loomed over him, ancient carvings etched into its surface, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Each step closer to the altar made the glow brighter, almost as if it recognized him, as if it hungered for his blood. His wrists were bound tightly, the alien chains biting into his skin. 2 towering alien guards flanked him, their jagged armor gleaming under the blood-red sky. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jarek could feel their cold detachment. To them, he was already dead. Above them, perched on a high platform, stood the high priest, his robes flowing in the wind. He held a ceremonial blade in one hand and a glowing orb in the other. His voice boomed across the arena, silencing the crowd. "Behold the chosen warrior," the priest declared, his voice dripping with reverence. "The one foretold by the prophecy. His sacrifice shall open the gates of salvation and shield us from the darkness." The crowd erupted again, their cheers mixing with an unsettling chant that seemed to vibrate in the air. Jarek's teeth clenched as he struggled against his captors. His efforts were futile. The chains were alien-made, unbreakable by human strength alone. As he was forced to his knees before the altar, Jarek scanned his surroundings. He was a soldier, trained to assess every detail, every possible advantage. The arena was surrounded by towering walls, with no obvious escape routes. Alien guards stood at every entrance, their weapons at the ready. His situation seemed hopeless. But Jarek wasn't the type to give up. His mind raced as he thought of a plan. Any plan. Stay calm, stay alive, he reminded himself. He had survived worse odds before. The priest descended from the platform, his every step deliberate, his every movement calculated to instill fear. As he approached, the crowd fell silent again, the air thick with anticipation. Jarek glared at him, refusing to show weakness. "You think killing me will save you?" He spat, his voice defiant. "You're just cowards hiding behind superstition." The priest didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, a cold, unsettling smile. "You do not understand, human. This is not about you. It is about the prophecy. Your death is not a choice. It is destiny." The priest raised the ceremonial blade high, the light from the glowing orb casting eerie shadows across his face. The crowd held their breath, the moment of sacrifice drawing near. Just as the blade began to descend, the ground beneath the altar trembled. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the arena, growing louder with each passing second. The crowd gasped, some stepping back in fear. The priest froze, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion. The glowing carvings on the altar began to pulse violently, the blue light now flickering erratically. "What is this?" the priest demanded, his voice trembling for the first time. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, their grips on Jarek loosening slightly. Jarek didn't waste a second. Using the distraction to his advantage, he surged to his feet and slammed his shoulder into one of the guards, knocking him off balance. The other guard reached for him, but Jarek twisted his body, kicking out with all his strength. The guard stumbled, and Jarek broke into a sprint, chains clinking as he ran. The arena descended into chaos. The crowd screamed, some running for the exits, while others stood frozen, unsure of what was happening. The ground continued to quake, cracks forming in the stone beneath their feet. Jarek didn't know what was causing the disturbance, but he didn't care. All that mattered was escaping. He ducked behind a fallen pillar, catching his breath as he scanned for his next move. Above the noise, a commanding voice rang out, a voice that silenced even the priest. "Stop this madness." Jarek turned his head sharply, his eyes locking onto the source of the voice. A figure stepped into the arena, her presence commanding and unyielding. She was tall, with an otherworldly beauty, her glowing golden eyes piercing through the chaos. Her robes were different from the others, simple, yet radiating power. It was her, the alien prophetess. The crowd fell silent, their fear replaced with awe. Even the priest seemed unsure, lowering his blade as he stared at her. Jarek's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary alien. She was the one he had heard whispers about, the one who defied the traditions of her people. The prophetess' gaze fell on Jarek, and for the first time, he saw something other than fear or contempt in an alien's eyes. He saw understanding. "You," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you were never meant to die here." The alien prophetess appears. The air in the arena felt heavier, almost suffocating. The glowing carvings on the altar flickered erratically, casting strange shadows on the panicked faces of the crowd. The quake had stopped, but the silence that followed was far more unsettling. Jarek crouched behind the broken pillar, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't dare move. Whatever had just happened wasn't part of the ritual, and he wasn't going to be the first to find out what came next. Then she appeared. She stepped onto the arena floor with the grace of someone who commanded authority, her every movement silencing the chaos around her. She wore no armor, no ceremonial robes like the priests, but there was something about her presence, an undeniable power that made even the bravest alien warriors hesitate. The prophetess. Jarek had heard rumors about her during his time on Xoreth. Some said she was blessed by the gods themselves. Others whispered that she was cursed. But one thing was clear, she was not like the others. While the priests clung to the old ways, she walked her own path, unafraid of breaking tradition. Her golden eyes scanned the arena, landing first on the high priest, then on the altar, and finally on Jarek. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of sorrow in her gaze, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The high priest stepped forward, his voice trembling with barely concealed anger. "Prophetess, why do you disrupt the sacred ritual? You know what the prophecies demand." Her voice was calm but unyielding. "I know what the prophecies truly demand, and this is not it." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. The high priest's face darkened. "You dare question the will of the gods? This human's death is the only way to save our world." The prophetess didn't flinch. "You think sacrificing him will save us? No. It will only doom us faster." Jarek's instincts told him to stay quiet, to keep observing. But her words struck something deep within him. This was the first time someone on this cursed planet had spoken against his death, the first time someone had treated him as more than a tool. The high priest raised his blade, pointing it at her. "You tread dangerous ground, prophetess. If you speak against the prophecies, you speak against the gods." She took a step closer, her voice steady. "The gods do not demand blind obedience. They demand wisdom, understanding. Sacrificing him is not the answer. It is fear masquerading as tradition." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, confusion spreading like wildfire. The guards, once unwavering in their loyalty to the priest, shifted uneasily. Jarek's mind raced. He didn't trust the prophetess. He couldn't afford to. But he couldn't deny that she was the only one standing between him and certain death. Before the priest could respond, the prophetess turned her gaze back to Jarek. "Stand up," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Jarek hesitated. The guards were still nearby, their weapons at the ready, but something in her tone compelled him to move. Slowly, cautiously, he rose from his crouch, his chains glinting in the faint blue light. The prophetess addressed the crowd, her voice rising with conviction. "Look at him. Does he seem like the cowardly prey you expect to die on this altar? Does he not stand tall, even in the face of death? This is not a man meant to be sacrificed. This is a man meant to lead." The crowd's murmurs grew into shouts, some in agreement, others in outrage. The arena was on the brink of chaos once more. The high priest's patience snapped. "Enough," he roared. "Guards, seize her. She has defied the will of the gods for the last time." The guards hesitated, glancing between the priest and the prophetess. The tension was palpable, like a storm waiting to break. But the prophetess didn't wait. With a sudden, fluid motion, she reached into the folds of her simple robes and pulled out a small, glowing artifact. She held it high, and a golden light burst forth, illuminating the entire arena. The guards shielded their eyes, and the crowd gasped in awe. Jarek could only stare, the light washing over him like a wave of warmth. "This," the prophetess declared, her voice echoing across the arena, "is the truth that the priests have hidden from you. The prophecies do not demand his death. They demand his survival. He is the key to our salvation, not the sacrifice." Jarek's mind spun. He didn't know what the artifact was or why the prophetess had chosen to save him. But one thing was clear. Everything had just changed. For the first time since he arrived on Xoreth, Jarek felt something other than fear. He felt hope. The prophetess' defiance of tradition. The golden light from the prophetess artifact cast long, flickering shadows across the faces of the crowd, illuminating their expressions of awe, fear, and confusion. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The ancient words of the priests, the chants of the crowd, the tension of the sacrifice, all of it was overshadowed by the power of her presence. Jarek stood frozen, his mind racing to make sense of what he had just witnessed. The alien woman had stepped into the heart of danger, not to condemn him, but to save him. Her words hung heavy in the air, challenging everything the people of Toreth believed. The high priest's voice shattered the stillness, trembling with fury. "You dare to wield the relic of the gods against their will." His hands trembled as he pointed at the prophetess. "This is blasphemy. You defy not just the prophecies but the gods themselves." The prophetess turned to him, her golden eyes sharp and unyielding. "It is you who defy the gods," she said, her voice calm yet filled with authority. "You twist the prophecies to serve your fear of change, your fear of losing power." The crowd gasped at her accusation, their murmurs growing louder. Jarek's instincts told him to stay silent, to let this play out. He wasn't sure whether the prophetess was his savior or his executioner, but for now, she was his only ally. The high priest's composure cracked. "You speak of power, yet here you are, commanding the attention of the people, spreading lies. The prophecy is clear. His death is the only path to salvation." The prophetess held up the glowing artifact, its golden light pulsing gently, almost as if it were alive. "You see this relic? It is a gift from the gods themselves, entrusted to those who seek truth. It reveals what you have hidden from the people. The prophecy does not end in sacrifice. It begins with courage." She turned to the crowd, addressing them directly. "This man," she said, gesturing to Jarek, "is not here to die for us. He is here to lead us. His strength, his will, and his survival are what will save us from the darkness. The gods do not demand his blood. They demand his victory." The arena erupted into chaos. Some shouted in agreement, emboldened by her words, while others called for her arrest. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, their loyalty wavering. Jarek, sensing the tension rising to a breaking point, finally spoke. "If you think killing me will save you, you're wrong. Sacrifice won't stop whatever is coming. Fighting will." His voice carried over the noise, strong and steady despite the chains around his wrists. The prophetess nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "The warrior speaks truth. We cannot rely on ancient traditions to save us. We must rely on ourselves, on our strength and unity. The high priest's face twisted in rage. Enough of this madness. Guards, seize them both. The guards hesitated, their movements slow and uncertain. The prophetess raised the artifact higher, and the golden light grew brighter, forcing the guards to shield their eyes. "You cannot force the will of the people," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "They see the truth now. The prophecies are not chains to bind us. They are paths to freedom." Jarek's mind raced. He wasn't sure what game the prophetess was playing, but he knew this was his chance. His body tensed, ready to fight if the guards attacked. The crowd's murmurs turned into shouts. "Let him live." Some cried. Others demanded answers, their faith in the priests shaken. The high priest, now desperate, raised his ceremonial blade. "If the gods will not act, I will. The sacrifice must be made." Before he could strike, the prophetess moved with inhuman speed, stepping between him and Jarek. Her hand shot out, gripping the priest's wrist with surprising strength. The artifact in her other hand flared brightly, and the priest cried out in pain, dropping the blade. The crowd gasped in shock. The guards froze, unsure of what to do. The prophetess turned back to Jarek, her expression calm but urgent. "This is your moment, warrior. Will you fight for your life, or will you accept the fate they tried to force upon you?" Jarek didn't hesitate. "I'll fight." With a swift motion, the prophetess held the artifact to his chains, and the golden light melted the bindings as if they were made of wax. Jarek flexed his wrists, finally free, and stepped forward to face the guards. The arena had turned into a battlefield of wills. Tradition against defiance, fear against hope. And at the center of it all stood Jarek and the prophetess, united against the tide of an ancient belief system they had no choice but to challenge. A dangerous alliance. The arena was no longer a place of worship or tradition. It was chaos incarnate. The crowd roared, split between those clinging to the old ways and those daring to believe in the prophetess' words. The guards, caught between orders and hesitation, shifted uneasily, their weapons raised, but their resolve faltering. Jarek stood free of his chains, his eyes darting to the prophetess. "If you have a plan, now's the time," he said, his voice low but firm. The prophetess turned to him, her golden eyes glinting with determination. "The plan is simple," she replied, her voice calm despite the turmoil. "We survive. Together." Jarek raised an eyebrow. "That's it. That's the big plan." She didn't smile, but there was a spark of defiance in her tone. "Survival is the first step to victory, human." The high priest's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Do not let them leave. Seize them both," the gods demanded. The guards finally moved, their hesitation replaced by duty. They surged forward, their jagged blades gleaming. Jarek had no weapon, but he didn't need one. He was a soldier, trained to fight with whatever he had, even his bare hands. He lunged at the nearest guard, dodging the blade aimed at him and driving his shoulder into the alien's chest. The guard stumbled back, and Jarek twisted the weapon from his grasp, turning it on another attacker. The prophetess moved like a shadow, her steps quick and precise. She ducked under a blade, her glowing artifact flaring as it struck the guard's armor. The alien crumpled, dazed by the blast of energy. "Keep moving," she called to Jarek. "We can't fight them all." Jarek gritted his teeth, slashing at another guard. I noticed. The crowd's cries grew louder as the two fugitives fought their way to the edge of the arena. A group of guards blocked the nearest exit, their weapons raised in a tight formation. "Prophetess," Jarek muttered, his voice edged with frustration. "I really hope that artifact of yours does more than glow." She glanced at him, a flicker of amusement in her expression. "It does." Before he could ask what she meant, the prophetess raised the artifact high. Its golden light blazed brighter than ever, forcing everyone nearby, guards and spectators alike, to shield their eyes. A wave of energy erupted from the artifact, sending the guards flying backward and clearing a path. Jarek didn't waste a second. "I take it back. That's one hell of a glow." They sprinted toward the opening, the chaos behind them growing as the high priest shouted orders, his voice nearly drowned out by the uproar. As they burst through the exit and into the labyrinthine corridors beneath the arena, Jarek glanced at the prophetess. "All right, I'll admit it, you saved my life. But I need answers. Who are you, and why are you helping me?" She didn't break stride, her expression focused. "I am the prophetess, chosen by the gods to interpret their will. And I am helping you because you are the key to saving not just my people, but yours as well." Jarek frowned, his soldier's instincts flaring. "That's a pretty vague answer. Care to be more specific?" She stopped suddenly, turning to face him. The prophecies were misinterpreted, twisted by those who feared change. "The gods never wanted you to die, Jarek. They wanted you to lead. There is a darkness coming, something that threatens all of us, human and alien alike. Your survival is the only way we can stand a chance." Jarek stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't trust her, not yet, but he had seen enough to know that whatever was happening on Soreth, it was bigger than him, bigger than both of them. "Fine," he said finally, his voice steady. "We'll play it your way, for now. But if this goes south, don't expect me to go down quietly." The prophetess inclined her head, her golden eyes unwavering. "I wouldn't expect anything less from a warrior." The sound of boots echoed down the corridor behind them, guards in pursuit. "We need to move," the prophetess said, gripping the artifact tightly. "This is only the beginning." Jarek nodded, his grip tightening on the alien blade he had taken. "Lead the way, prophetess. Let's see where this road takes us." Together, they disappeared into the winding corridors, two unlikely allies bound by a dangerous fate. Behind them, the arena burned with the fires of rebellion. Ahead of them, the unknown waited, filled with dangers they couldn't yet imagine. The chase and battle. The corridors beneath the arena were a labyrinth of ancient stone and flickering light, their purpose long forgotten by most. Jarek and the prophetess moved quickly, their footsteps echoing as they navigated the twisting passages. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Alien guards shouting commands and the clang of weapons against armor. Jarek gripped the alien blade tightly, his instincts on high alert. "You know, a little warning about this underground maze would have been nice," he muttered, his voice low. The prophetess glanced back at him, her golden eyes sharp. "This is the only way out. If you have complaints, save them for later, assuming we survive." "I'm holding you to that." Jarek shot back, a faint smirk tugging at his lips despite the danger. The narrow corridor opened into a vast chamber lit by strange, glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The light bathed the room in an eerie blue glow, casting long shadows that danced as they moved. Jarek stopped abruptly, his soldier's instincts screaming at him. "Hold on," he said, scanning the chamber. "Something's not right." The prophetess nodded, her expression grim. "This is the crossroads, a place where choices are made. The guards will know to block the exits." As if on cue, the sound of heavy boots echoed from every tunnel leading out of the chamber. Jarek spun, his blade raised, as a group of alien guards emerged from the shadows, their weapons gleaming. The high priest's voice rang out, distant but commanding. "Surrender, prophetess. Surrender, human. There is no escape." Jarek scoffed, tightening his grip on his weapon. "You'd think they'd get more creative with their threats." The prophetess stepped forward, her artifact glowing faintly in her hand. "They won't stop, Jarek. They will fight to the death to protect their version of the prophecy." Jarek smirked. "Good thing I've never been a fan of dying." The first guard charged, his blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Jarek moved instinctively, sidestepping the attack and countering with a quick slash of his own. The alien stumbled, and Jarek followed up with a strike that disarmed him completely. More guards swarmed into the chamber, their movements coordinated and ruthless. Jarek and the prophetess fought side by side, an unlikely but effective team. Jarek's training took over, each movement calculated and precise. He parried a blade aimed for his chest, using his attacker's momentum to flip him onto the ground. Another guard lunged, but Jarek ducked low, delivering a powerful kick that sent the alien sprawling. Meanwhile, the prophetess wielded her artifact like a weapon of its own. Each pulse of golden light sent guards staggering, their senses overwhelmed. She moved with a fluid grace, her strikes precise and devastating. But the numbers weren't in their favor. For every guard they incapacitated, 2 more seemed to take their place. "This is getting old fast," Jarek grunted, blocking another attack. "Got any bright ideas, prophetess?" Her eyes flicked to the largest tunnel, where the faint outline of sunlight hinted at freedom. "We need to reach that exit. It's our only chance." "Great," Jarek said, ducking under another swing. "Lead the way. I'll keep these guys busy." The prophetess hesitated for a fraction of a second, her gaze locking onto his. "Don't get yourself killed, warrior. The prophecy depends on you." Jarek flashed a grin, his confidence unshaken. "Trust me, I'm hard to kill." She moved toward the exit, her artifact blazing with light to clear a path. Jarek stayed behind, his blade a blur as he fought off the relentless wave of guards. For a moment, it seemed hopeless. The guards pressed in, their attacks growing more coordinated. Jarek's muscles burned, his breath coming in short gasps. But he refused to fall. Then, just as the tide threatened to overwhelm him, a deafening roar shook the chamber. The ground trembled, and the crystals lining the walls pulsed violently. The guards froze, their eyes wide with fear. Even the prophetess stopped, her expression one of alarm. "What now?" Jarek muttered, his grip tightening on his weapon. From the darkness of one of the tunnels came a massive, shadowy figure, something neither human nor alien. Its glowing red eyes pierced through the gloom, and its guttural growl sent shivers down Jarek's spine. The prophetess's voice was barely a whisper. "The Sentinel, a guardian of the ancient paths. It awakens only when the sacred balance is threatened." "Fantastic," Jarek said, backing toward her. "You couldn't have mentioned this earlier." She shook her head, her voice steady but urgent. "We need to move. Now." The Sentinel let out another roar, charging into the chamber with terrifying speed. Jarek didn't need to be told twice. He turned and ran, keeping pace with the prophetess as the chamber erupted into chaos once more. Behind them, the guards screamed as the Sentinel tore through their ranks, its massive form unstoppable. As they reached the tunnel and sunlight poured over them, Jarek glanced back one last time. The Sentinel was still rampaging, and the High Priest's shouts were drowned out by the carnage. "That," Jarek said, breathless but alive, "was way too close." The prophetess didn't respond, her focus already on the path ahead. "This is only the beginning, warrior. The real battle lies beyond." Jarek took a deep breath, his adrenaline still surging. "Then let's get to it." With that, they disappeared into the light, leaving the chaos of the crossroads behind. The twist and redemption. The landscape beyond the tunnels was vast and alien, a sprawling desert of shimmering black sand under a sky painted with hues of violet and crimson. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks glowing faintly with the same blue light that had illuminated the altar. Jarek and the prophetess stood on the edge of the barren expanse, catching their breath after their narrow escape. Jarek wiped the sweat from his brow, his blade still clutched tightly in his hand. "I really hope you have more answers than surprises at this point," he said, his voice edged with exhaustion. The prophetess turned to him, her golden eyes soft but resolute. "The answers you seek are ahead, but they will not be easy to face." Jarek rolled his shoulders, the tension in his muscles refusing to ease. "Yeah, well, easy isn't exactly my specialty." As they moved forward, the ground beneath them began to hum faintly, a low vibration that grew stronger with each step. The prophetess stopped suddenly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "There," she said, pointing to a distant structure that shimmered like a mirage. It was a massive obelisk, its surface etched with glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with life. "What is that?" Jarek asked, narrowing his eyes. "The heart of Torith," she replied. "It's where the true prophecies are stored, and it's where we'll find the truth about your role in all of this." Jarek hesitated. "You're telling me the entire planet runs on some giant glowing monument? What's next? It talks too." The prophetess didn't answer, her focus unwavering. "We need to move quickly. The high priest won't stop hunting us, and the darkness I spoke of is already stirring." As they approached the obelisk, the hum grew louder, resonating in Jarek's chest. The air felt heavier, charged with an unseen energy. When they reached the base, the prophetess raised her artifact, and the glowing obelisk reacted immediately, its symbols shifting and rearranging themselves. A low, melodic tone filled the air as a doorway appeared, carved seamlessly into the surface. "Inside lies the truth," the prophetess said, stepping forward. Jarek followed, his senses on high alert. The interior of the obelisk was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls were alive with swirling patterns of light, and the air buzzed with an electric charge. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested a sphere of pure energy, pulsating gently. The prophetess approached it, her voice reverent. "This is the core of the prophecy. It holds the memories and guidance of our ancestors. It will show us the truth." Before Jarek could respond, the sphere flared brightly, and a wave of light washed over them. Images flooded his mind, visions of alien worlds consumed by shadow, civilizations crumbling, and an endless void spreading across the galaxy. He stumbled back, his breath ragged. What is this?" The prophetess steadied him, her voice urgent. "It's the darkness I spoke of. An ancient force that feeds on fear and division. It was the same force that twisted the prophecies, turning them into tools of control instead of hope." Jarek clenched his fists, his mind racing. "And what does this have to do with me?" The sphere pulsed again, and another vision appeared, this time of Jarek himself. He was leading an army, both human and alien, standing against the encroaching void. His presence was a beacon, rallying those who had once been enemies into a united force. "You are the key," the prophetess said, her voice firm. "Your survival, your strength, and your leadership will determine whether we face extinction or rise to fight back." Jarek stared at the vision, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent his life as a soldier, following orders, fighting battles that often felt meaningless. But this was different. "You're saying I'm supposed to save the galaxy," he said, his tone a mix of disbelief and determination. "Not alone," the prophetess replied. "But you will be the spark that ignites the flame." Before Jarek could respond, the obelisk trembled and the light dimmed. The prophetess's expression darkened. "They'd found us," she said, her voice tight. "The high priest and his forces are here." Jarek gripped his blade, his resolve hardening. "Then we make our stand. If this is what the prophecies meant, then I'm not going down without a fight." The prophetess nodded, a flicker of pride in her eyes. "You are ready, warrior. Let them come." As the doorway behind them burst open and the enemy poured in, Jarek stood tall, the visions of his destiny burning in his mind. For the first time, he felt more than a soldier. He felt like a leader. The battle for Xoreth and the galaxy had just begun.